Call of Duty has come a long way since its 2003 PC exclusive first installment. I'd expect a game series to change more than just graphics over all that time, especially a worldwide phenomenon like COD. I like to draw a comparison to the Fast and Furious franchise, which also had a beginning grounded in a simpler, more focused genre. But where the Furious movies moved from street racing to blockbuster action, and got more fun and exciting, probably because the first few sucked anyway, Call of Duty moved from realistic World War II shooters to blockbuster shooter madness, and have only gotten worse. Many people aren't too familiar with the humbler beginnings of the series. Ask a random COD player today, and the most they'll probably know about the first few entries is that they're old and set in World War II. Funnily enough, many of these same fans are calling for a return to the roots of the series, and Sledgehammer Games seems to have listened. The series progressed from World War II to modern day to the near future and beyond, but for the first time since World at War, the developers are taking a huge leap back to the past. COD 2017, COD World War II, is a resounding return to form, being boots on the ground, set in World War II, duh, and well, that's about it. The gameplay and holistic feel seem to be about the same as it's been for years. Just taking out jetpacks isn't enough. I don't want to speculate about games that haven't been released yet, but if this game disappoints fans looking for a return to the roots of the series, it'll be because Sledgehammer didn't really return to the roots of COD. They just gave the series an old coat of paint. Crafting a game taking the player across multiple major battles of a real war is much easier than trying to cram in as many epic set pieces the design team can think of.
Provide support now.
Everyone move up!
So, I think it's prudent to go back and explore the roots of Call of Duty, beyond Modern Warfare, to see just what made them special. And I think there's no better game to do this with than Call of Duty 2. The Call of Duty I consider to be the most thought out, consistent, organized, and overall best in the whole series. It's the quintessential classic COD experience, and also the first shooter game I played. So without further introduction, here's a look back at Call of Duty 2. Released on November 22, 2005 by Infinity Ward for the PC and Xbox 360, Call of Duty 2 was a massive success, at least for the time. 77% of all 360 owners also purchased COD 2. For comparison, about 86% of Xbox owners also bought Halo Combat Evolved, which is arguably the most famous system seller outside Nintendo. Reviews praised the game's graphics and sound, saying they were the best the 360 had to offer. You can't always trust what the reviews say, but in this case, I think they got it right. Of course, by modern standards, the graphics have aged as well as a presidential banana, and the frame rate doesn't hold up at 60 FPS as much as future games would. But it was 2005. The best looking game was probably Battlefield 2 for the PC, and though it definitely looked better, it still couldn't hold up even a few years later with games such as BioShock. But as for the sound design, Call of Duty 2 is top notch. If Modern Warfare 2 was Modern Warfare on steroids, that COD 2 was COD 1 on exercise and a diet high in protein. I say this because the evolution felt more natural, so it didn't come with the negative consequences of pushing further than you can handle. It improved in every way possible from previous games. COD 3, on the other hand, didn't make any significant innovative leaps from COD 2, except a few multiplayer additions like sprint and vehicles. The gunplay felt the worst it ever had in the series, a series whose main saving grace at this point is its buttery smooth gameplay. I can't completely blame Treyarch because they were given an 8-month development cycle, and I will say that running over your enemies in a Jeep in multiplayer, that never gets old. By now you should understand what makes COD 2 stand out from the other old Call of Duties, but what makes it stand out from almost every other shooter to this day. Call of Duty 2's campaign, totaling 27 missions, begins with a tutorial that immediately puts you in your place. You are a lowly, everyday soldier with no special talents.
Special talents?
Worth less than a grenade. This theme continues through the Russian campaign to the British and then to the American missions. You never feel like a one-man army, which becomes evident tenfold with higher difficulties. This game is meant for hardened or veteran difficulty. Even with the controversial auto health regeneration, you feel like you could die at any moment. Enemies will silently wait around corners, you'll be ambushed by a large group when you least expect it, and this keeps you on your toes at all times. The closest I felt to a superhero was the final part of the British campaign, where I was shooting down airplanes left and right. But this was offset by the frustratingly difficult shootout that came before. Every mission I felt vulnerable at every turn, even during the tank missions, which had laughably bad controls. When later COD games gave me this feeling of fear and vulnerability COD 2 has throughout, that I could die at any moment, it was similarly exhilarating. The campaign story itself is bare bones. I don't remember more than a couple people's names, Vasily, because the Russians say it so memorably, and Captain Price for his big mustache and possible alcoholism. There isn't an interconnected story centered on any one villain like most of the other COD games, but the war is the story. This might seem like a cheap cop-out, but it works well because the game knows this. Each death displays a quote about the war on screen. Each section begins with some footage of the war courtesy of the military channel, which sets up the context of the levels. Not only this, but the game strikes the fine line of making a game set during wartime while still communicating that war is terrible. Many shooter games glamorize war at one point or another by showing it as an awesome playground for super soldiers, or as inconsequential through the mountains of enemies you remorselessly leave in your wake. COD 2 is different. It manages to make you feel something when you kill. It feels brutal even with the outdated graphics and animations. The Last Stand effect further highlights this. I almost feel sorry for these digital soldiers, if not for them being Nazis. Your allies can and will die, and since they actually help you kill the enemy, it hurts a little to see. They also give helpful callouts, which adds further immersion and connects you with your allies just that extra bit. However, the game tries to invest you more into the characters by having group huddles after the end of many of the missions, which helps flesh out that more is going on than just the street fighting. However, it gets old after a while. The last mission even ends with one of these moments, and it comes across as painfully lame.
Well, I'd be honored, sir. But the thing is, we'd be short a sergeant. A Corporal Taylor here, he might be worth looking at.
I'll keep that in mind, Lieutenant. See to your men. Dismissed.
Another thing that gets old is the infinitely respawning enemies. If you don't advance position, bad guys will keep spawning forever, which can take you out of the experience sometimes, and it makes the game way harder. Also, the campaign itself isn't as varied in terms of gameplay options as much as I would like. There are those 2 tank missions, and the objectives are varied enough, but the vast majority of the game is just fighting in the streets until everything is dead. One thing the game does extremely well is make use and exploit its setting. I don't need any context explained to me for me to want to kill the bad guys, because they're Nazis. The setting works for the gameplay by allowing me to gun down thousands of enemies without thinking, because the opposition is truly evil. I can't be so certain in most modern games. Like I said before, future shooters don't give me enough context to be able to effectively detach myself from the enemy soldiers I gun down, which ends up glamorizing their deaths. Killing Nazis set out on world domination is the only thing I can do. Black Ops misses a huge opportunity to comment on the horrors and missteps of the Vietnam War, as it never touches this subject. Call of Duty 2 doesn't have to talk about the possible moral ramifications of killing Nazis, but it still has to show that killing them can be an awful experience in itself. It does this better than many other games by not shying away from the consequences of the war. Better yet, its setting inherently evokes a sense of gravity to everything going on because you know the history behind your actions. There are real people whose lives depend on Allied success on the battlefield.
That's right.
The World War II setting is perfect for shooter games for this reason. It makes the developer's job so much easier by not having to explain context, while also giving a heightened urgency to every action. This isn't a knock on the skill of Infinity Ward as storytellers. I'm simply saying that moving into fictional wars, or even very controversial ones like Vietnam or Iraq, is much trickier than it sounds. None of this would matter much if gameplay was sacrificed. But as you'd expect, Call of Duty delivers with smooth gun mechanics. Really, the only unpolished feature is the melee, which sometimes feels inconsistent, but you don't use it often, and when you do land a hit, it feels meaty and satisfying. The higher recoil of the weapons not only makes them feel more accurate to the times, and adds a sense of weight, it also gives more skill to the game. Kills with laser guns like the ACR are wholly less satisfying than successfully mastering the recoil pattern of the MP44. The lack of sprint, though probably a product of the times, fits nicely with the feel of the game. Positioning becomes key, and it adds even more to the sense of vulnerability. You can't just rocket boost to safety. Even health regeneration, a conscious decision in 2005, fits well. It became a staple of basically every game from then onwards because of its success in Halo, Call of Duty, and other games. Really, the only criticism people levy against it is its lack of realism. But when was walking over a box with a red cross and instantly healing all bullet wounds ever more realistic than sitting behind a cover for a few seconds to let the red goo on your screen wipe away? Mechanics and settings have to work together. Developers can't simply take the standard mechanics of the genre and apply them across all time periods and locations. Even great games like BioShock Infinite can struggle with this. Vigors don't make any sense in a puritanical place like Colombia. Many times during the campaign, maybe one too many times, you have to throw a smoke grenade to progress past a machine gun emplacement. This blew me away the first time I played it because it added a kind of puzzle-like element to the game, while also showing a period-accurate tactic. If this game mechanic was in a modern set game, it would feel completely out of place. Games that use their setting to add in unique situations like this immerse you just that much more. Now, unfortunately, this line of thinking can result in advanced situations. With an advanced setting, the game mechanics must advance as well. That's why it came to me as no surprise when Call of Duty became a rabbit simulator. Future settings wouldn't feel right if the gameplay was the same as it was in World War II. Still, what happened with Infinite Warfare?
Sunsets always remind me of bowls of fruit. What do they make you think of?
Infinity Ward.
Odin control. Odin control.
Explosions.
It was at this moment that he knew.
But if the developer leaves in all the same mechanics as the World War II games, but just adds in some fast, fluid, and crazy movement, things just won't work out. In the multiplayer setting, it leads to frustration when tactical gameplay is replaced with pure chaos. A staple of any multiplayer experience, and any action game in general, is having some sense of control over your destiny. If you died, it was because it was a mistake you made, not accommodating for players jumping across the map in a few seconds by adding in more elements to counterbalance this, like large health pools or secondary combat options, will leave players feeling powerless to chance. In COD 2's campaign, every death feels deserved because you either were not paying attention, missed your shots, became too reckless, or just felt your inner emo come out. You will die. A lot. This is because the enemy is just the right level of smart and skillful, and the time to kill and to die is just right to be conducive to thoughtful strategy, while still fitting in with the setting of the game. As a normal soldier, I expect to die after standing out in the open for a few seconds, but if I see myself survive through endless punishment, but then die from a few bullets, it doesn't work. That's a major reason why veteran difficulty in later COD games feels so off. But in COD 2's harder difficulties, just as in games like Dark Souls or LEGO Star Wars, the satisfaction of finally overcoming the enemy by figuring out the optimal strategy and successfully accomplishing it makes all the wasted respawn time worth it. So every mechanic in the game helps set up exactly what this game is meant to be, and they fit together with the setting and tone like 3 quarks in a proton. But there's a little bit of a caveat to that. And to find out what it is, we'll have to take a dive into the heart and soul of the Call of Duty phenomenon. Multiplayer has been what keeps most players invested in the COD franchise, and where the vast majority of their time will be spent ever since Modern Warfare intelligently combined RPG elements like leveling and unlocks with fast-paced FPS action. Call of Duty 2 was before all that. There were no unlockables, kill streaks, create a class, or stat tracking, nor loot boxes and all that other crap that began to bloat the series since Advanced Warfare. All there is are some preset classes to choose from. Having a balanced multiplayer is crucial, and here Call of Duty could waver due to its asymmetry. The Americans and British have 7 classes, while the Russians and Germans have 6. Since each team has access to different weaponry, it could be easy for there to be an imbalance, but each side feels about equal. I would say that the PPSH is statistically the most overpowered weapon, since it has the highest fire rate, largest magazine capacity, low recoil, and best range of the SMGs. But still, every gun feels powerful and about even, killing in 3 to 4 shots at close to medium range. For example, the Gewehr 43 and the M1 carbine both have the same damage and fire rate, but their different magazine size and reload speeds balance out. Each gun's iron sights, from the nice MP40s to the very obtrusive Brenns, also balance the weapons. Statistically, each class is viable, but due to the map design, snipers become extremely powerful. They have infinite range and can one-shot anyone above the knee. It's so bad that I think multiplayer would be more fun without scoped rifles in it. Quickscoping, a phenomenon plaguing the modern games, is quite easy to do, but in any case, each firefight feels intense. I like how pure twitch mechanical skill is important, but thoughtful tactics and positioning will win you the game. The maps themselves vary quite a bit, like in most games. There are 3 basic types: snow, desert, and temperate, basically the ones set in Western Europe, which follows with the 3 campaigns of the game. The Russians battle in the snow, British in the desert, and American in the temperate. The maps are generally medium to large with lots of long sightlines and sniper perches. This makes camping a problem, but that's more on the players than the game itself. Most maps have the standard 3 lanes with some sort of powerful overlook near the middle. El Alamein remains my favorite map due to its small size and possibility for intense close quarters action in the trenches. COD veterans will recognize Brecourt, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, and Carrington from their remakes in later games. Due to the short time to kill in wide open areas, moving around carefully is much more important than in later games. It feels highly punishing at first, and requires a different kind of player to the dude bros of Modern Warfare 2 and beyond. There are 5 game modes: Deathmatch, which would later be named Free-for-All, Team Deathmatch, Search and Destroy, Headquarters, and Capture the Flag. Multiplayer in general feels more unpolished than the campaign, and later editions of the game are definitely more refined and fun at times. My favorite COD multiplayer to this day is Black Ops 2, that has the most balanced play and great maps. In COD 2, smoke grenade spam is a big problem for 2 reasons. It gets really annoying to deal with, and it causes big frame rate drops. This brings me to the more technical problems of multiplayer. Due to how the game renders objects, scoping in usually causes a frame drop which hurts your accuracy at long range with snipers. But in a way, this helps balance their power. Spawns are pretty terrible. Players will constantly spawn behind you, so you have to quickly learn to always be turning around. That reminds me, I didn't mention this during the campaign section because it never felt too bad, but there are only 4 sensitivity settings: low, medium, high, and very high. I prefer a lower sensitivity, so high was too fast, but medium was too slow. It's a little nitpicky, but it can drag down an entire game if it's really important to you. With the strong snipers in the game, bad spawns can be made even worse.
Round 2. Fight!
Overall, multiplayer is fun. It feels closer to Counter-Strike than it does Black Ops, which means it takes some getting used to if you come from later COD games. It rewards multiple types of skill, not just fast reflexes, and it feels balanced enough. Almost 12 years after launch, I was still able to find games with up to 7 players in them, which I was not expecting. The game only supports 8 players at a time on the 360, but on the PC it can have up to 64 players, which sounds absolutely insane. Unfortunately, that might be impossible to find at this point. Going back and playing this game online is an otherworldly experience, and I highly recommend it if you can find any populated lobbies. So, that was a long look back at Call of Duty 2, the greatest game since sliced bread. Thanks for watching. This is my first YouTube video, so if you have any constructive feedback, I'd love to hear it. And please subscribe if you want to see more videos by me in the future.